Hey, 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 good morning. It is Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here with the fourth major cause of fear. And this major cause of fear, I think pretty much everyone I know has experienced it at some point in their life. It can hit at any age. I like to believe that if you live long enough, you're going to experience this particular cause of fear. It is the fear of loss of love. And for some reason, I felt like I needed to wear a hat today talking about the fear of loss of love. No idea why. I just felt like I needed to hide my eyes so it doesn't look like I've been crying. But I'm not currently afraid of losing love. But obviously, I, like most people, have experienced the loss of love in my life, or the fear of loss of love. Sometimes the fear of loss of love is what actually causes us to lose the love that we're afraid of losing in the first place. Now, that sounds kind of circular, but it's so true, because the symptoms of the fear of loss of love are exhibited in ways that would actually push the person that we're afraid of losing away from us faster. I personally experienced this myself. I'm divorced, so obviously I've had a fear of loss of love. And if I think back to my marriage, there were things that I did in that marriage that actually caused that love to go away faster. And I'll talk about that in the symptoms and maybe share some of my admissions of guilt of actually exhibiting some of these behaviors and some of these characteristics, and why I know that they contributed to my divorce. Now, my divorce was because I was married to the wrong person. Great guy, but not a great guy for me. And that happens so often nowadays because we have a lot of common values, but also a lot of different beliefs about how the world works and how it should be and what we're here to contribute as individuals. But the fear of loss of love, Napoleon Hill contends that it stems from man's habit of polygamy and man's inability to be monogamous, I guess, is sort of what he's saying. And I would add that today, in our time, women have gotten so much more freedom that women are as guilty of the inability to commit to a monogamous relationship as men were in Napoleon Hill's time. At least that's my observation. You can comment below and differ with me and state your case of why you think that isn't true. And I'm open to listening to it because I don't know that it's true, but it appears to be true, especially when you hear statistics and read statistics that 70% of divorces are initiated by women nowadays. That is not a coincidence. 70% of anything is a statistically significant number. Therefore, it isn't an accident. There's something going on that's causing that number to be so high. Sneak a quick drink here. So, fear of loss of love. Now, fear of loss of love, we often think of fear of loss of love of a close, personal, intimate relationship, for example, my divorce. But we will do as much for fear of loss of love of a parent, fear of loss of love of our children, fear of loss of love from a friend or someone we think highly of or respect. It might feel a little bit differently, and we might deal with it slightly differently emotionally, but a lot of the behaviors are the same. For example, I will admit some things here. I have done things for my children that probably spoiled them or weren't necessarily in their best interest over the years. And I didn't realize until I read this that it was probably because of my fear of loss of love, of my fear of them not loving me. Now, they'll probably still love me. I'm their mom, and I'm a pretty decent mom. But sometimes we want to spoil and show our love to our children in extravagant ways that we don't have to, because they're going to love us anyway, as long as we're good people and we treat them well and we love them. Also, in my marriage, I'm sure I made decisions and I made choices and I went along with things. For example, we started several businesses that I had zero interest in and zero passion for during my marriage. But I did them because I knew that the ex-husband wanted to be involved in those businesses, in those industries. And wasn't necessarily a bad thing overall, but I knew that my heart wasn't in those businesses. So we do things like that because we're afraid of the loss of love. Now, if I hadn't done that, would I have been divorced 10 years sooner? Probably. But who knows? Maybe that did extend the life of my marriage or our relationship. Maybe it didn't. There's no way to know. Unless, of course, you are a fortune teller or mind reader, neither of which I am. So fear of loss of love will cause us to do things that we normally wouldn't do. I mean, we've all had crushes or whatever you want to call it on other people before, and we've behaved in ways that are, as you look back on them, totally embarrassing. I mean, I don't know if you've done that, but I sure know I've done that in the past. And then years later, I'll think back to the situation. I'll be like, oh my God, I can't even believe I had a crush on that person, much less I had a crush on that person for a really long time. So what are the symptoms of the fear of loss of love, according to Napoleon Hill? I'm going to read those with my handy-dandy magnifying glass. The distinguishing features, he calls this. So as I read this, ask yourself and think back. Have you done that in the past? Have you displayed that in the past? And could it have been a symptom of your fear of loss of love of someone? Jealousy is the first symptom. The habit of being suspicious of friends and loved ones without any reasonable evidence of sufficient grounds. Jealousy is a form of dementia praecox. I'm not sure what that means. I'm admitting I'm not sure what that means. I think it's probably preliminary or the stages before dementia, which sometimes become violent without the slightest of cause. The habit of accusing wife or husband of infidelity without grounds. General suspicion of everyone, absolute faith in no one. So, are you suspicious of your friends or of people that you should love and care about, of your family? Are you jealous of your significant other's spending time with his or her friends or relatives or family, or doing activities and participating in activities that don't necessarily include you? For example, the ex-husband was a hunter and a fisherman, and sometimes I would participate in those activities, sometimes I didn't participate in those activities. Well, I couldn't be jealous every time he went to spend time with his friends hunting or fishing. Well, I could have been, but in the earlier years I wasn't. I trusted him and I wasn't worried about it. Later on, that changed. Fault finding. The habit of finding fault with friends, relatives, business associates, and loved ones upon the slightest provocation or without any cause whatsoever. So if you're overly judgmental, always criticizing or finding fault in another person, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the person you're worried about or concerned about or afraid of losing their love of. It might be you're having trouble at home in your personal relationship, but you're going to work and you're taking those fears and doubts and worries out on all of your peers or all of your subordinates at work by treating them in ways that are over judgmental or fault finding. And the third major symptom of fear of loss of love, not loss of love is a real thing, but the fear of loss of love is what we're talking about here, is gambling. The habit of gambling, stealing, cheating, or otherwise taking hazardous chances to provide money for loved ones with the belief that love can be bought. The habit of spending beyond one's means or incurring debt to provide gifts for loved ones with the object of making a favorable showing. Insomnia, nervousness, lack of persistence, weakness of will, lack of self-control, and lack of self-reliance and bad temper are all symptoms of your fear of loss of love. And I will admit, I'm guilty of some of those. Again, spending too much on my kids over the holidays because, well, mostly I did it because it irritated the ex-husband, but also because I love my kids. I wanted them to have an awesome Christmas or an awesome birthday or an awesome holiday. So that's it, our fear of loss of love. I did have some examples, but I think I've shared them already. But nearly all of us have had a broken heart at some time or other, and that's actually the result or the experience that causes us to have a fear of loss of love, because we have experienced someone not loving us anymore or someone withdrawing their love. And the biggest thing to remember there is that people come and go in our lives. They come into our lives for a reason, and they leave our lives for a reason. And it might not have anything to do with us, but but it usually does have something to do with us. It usually is a lesson, or there's something that that person brought to our life or we brought to their life that was important for our life experience. And when you look at your relationships that way and figure out and focus on what you gained from that relationship and the good in that relationship, it's a lot easier to move on and let it go than if you're always focusing on the loss of that relationship. And if you approach all of your relationships with that in mind, knowing that life is always changing, people come and go in our lives for a reason, and then if you find that reason and understand that reason, once you come to terms with that and you understand that that's just the way of the world, it doesn't hurt you anymore. And those experiences don't have the ability to hurt you anymore. They have the ability to help you grow as a person and be the person that you're meant to be. So go out, make it an awesome day. Tomorrow we will talk about the 5th major cause of fear, and this is one that no one can avoid. So, well, you can avoid it, but the alternative really, really sucks, so you don't want to avoid it. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Go out, make it an awesome day, and I will see you soon. Bye. Don't be afraid.